Today we have with us Dr. E. Satyaprakash, and he will be talking about datafication of elections in multi-party democracies, the case of the 2019 elections in Andhra Pradesh. Dr. Satyaprakash is Associate Professor at the Department of Communication, University of Hyderabad, and he teaches documentary filmmaking, TV news production, and media management. His research interests include film studies, political economy of media, and media history. He's co-edited Cinemas of South India, Oxford University Press, with Dr. Soumya Dechamma, who's also part of the University of Hyderabad faculty, and written or co-written several articles and chapters for reputed journals and edited volumes. He has prepared a reading list for us, and I will be sharing the link shortly in chat. Hello, Satya sir. Welcome. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Devina. Thank you, everyone. Very good morning, and thanks for joining for this talk. Datafication, big data, data analytics has been under the radar for quite some time, and academics have been interested in this area. And I have joined with my bit, in this case, on datafication of elections, and specifically in the case of multi-party democracies like India. Starting with the alleged role of Cambridge Analytica in the case of 2016 presidential elections and the Brexit campaign, there's been a lot of focus and spotlight on data-driven communications and datafication of elections, or the role they play in political campaigns. In the Indian context, 2014 general elections are seen as a watershed event with regard to datafication of polls, because BJP is seen as successfully using data-driven communications in 2014 elections. In a multi-party democracy like India, where we follow first past the post election system, a difference of 2 to 3% of voting share will determine who will sit in treasury benches and who will sit in opposition. So in such circumstances, data-driven communications seems to have become very, very important. Data analytics have steadily made inroads into various aspects of electoral processes in India, including poll surveys to begin with, followed by poll management and poll campaigning. What I'll do in this talk is to examine the grassroots level deployment of data analytics in electoral politics. For that, I have taken Assembly elections 2019 in Andhra Pradesh as a case and examine what are the various issues that come out because of this datafication of elections. What I've done is I've interviewed people who had IT cells of political parties, and I have interviewed employees who work in political consultancies where data is used extensively. And I've also interviewed people who run poll survey organizations. And I've engaged with all the debates that surround datafication and elections through these interviews. So the presentation will be structured like this. Very briefly, I'll touch upon the rise of IT cells and political consultancies in the Indian context and in the regional context. Then I'll look at some of the issues that have arisen from my own interviews. One of the important issues is proprietary data sets which are created by political parties, and where does regulatory framework stand in this context is an important point to be made. And the next one is data turn in perception management and its role in disinformation campaigns, and followed by data turn in poll management. I'll deal with it when it comes. And also look at open data policy of Election Commission in the age of data analytics and how feasible it is to have open data policy without any questions asked. These are the people I have interviewed. I've done some in-depth interviews with them. I've done personal interviews with some people, and I have conducted interviews through email with some wherever possible. I had extended conversations with them on phone also. So Rajesh Serupalli, he worked as team leader for Social Post, a political consultancy that worked for TDP in 2019 elections. He has an MA in public policy, and he has worked as an activist with NAPM. TVS Shashidhar worked with IPAC, Indian Political Action Committee, during 2019 AP elections. He has Masters in Public Policy from National Law School, Bangalore. He has worked in development sector and with IPAC for a long time. Sumiran Komarraju is convener IT and social media, Greater Hyderabad region for BJYM, Youth Wing of Bharatiya Janata Party. And he has diploma in criminal justice, and he has been with BJP affiliated IT and social media wing for the past 5 years, full-time and voluntary. Political parties gave a lot of trouble. In Andhra, I tried to contact BJP, TDP, and YSR Congress Party. YSR Congress Party IT cell head postponed it so many times, and finally he didn't talk to me. And the BJP IT cell head was worried, and he said he is not authorized to speak and that I have to speak to Delhi, and he'll not be willing to speak. Mr. Brahmaya, who heads CBN Army, CBN stands for Chandrababu Naidu, and he heads the unofficial IT cell of TDP, and he spoke very extensively. They lost the elections, but he was forthcoming and he spoke very extensively on various issues. So apart from that, I've interviewed two of these people who work with cephology. The state coordinator of CSDS Lokniti, a national poll survey organization, E. Venkatesu. He's also associate professor in our university. And K. Venugopal Rao, who runs Center for Cephology Studies in Hyderabad, which is a research-based NGO which evaluates government schemes and also does commissioned election studies. And I also spoke to Pawan, a friend who works as a consultant for Congress Party, and he has a master's in communication, but he clarified a lot of issues which others were not willing to speak with me. So these broadly the set of interviews I did on various issues that arise due to datification of elections, and especially in the context of 2019 elections, both national and state. So as I mentioned, 2014 is seen as a watershed year when it comes to datification of elections. The number of political consultancies rose in a very big way, especially Indian Political Action Committee has got a name for itself, but there are many others like Political Edge, ACT, Association for Billion Minds, Chanakya, Jarvis, and Smart Neta. According to Seshidhar from IPAC, whom I interviewed, political consultancies offer end-to-end campaign design and execution, digital outreach, data analytics, technology assistance, research, and communication. To sum up, they offer full spectrum propaganda services based on data. So that's the key of key service of political consultancies. And when it comes to IT cells, there was nothing called as an IT cell in a political party a decade ago. But now every national party and every regional party has their own IT cell. In the regional context we are speaking of, in 2014 elections, a group of people who work in IT, sympathizing with Chandrababu Naidu and TDP, came together and ran a campaign all by themselves. It was called as Bring Babu Back. So after TDP won in the elections, they named it as CBN Army, which stands for Chandrababu Naidu. So CBN Army has become an unofficial IT wing for TDP. After that, in response to that, other parties also started their own IT wings, including YSR Congress Party in Andhra Pradesh. But the key difference between 2014 and 2019 was in the run-up to 2019 elections, apart from having an IT cell in the party, YSRCP hired the services of Indian Political Action Committee, and it did all the important work of data analytics and data-driven communication. So the whole strategy came from IPAC for YSRCP, and it was based at the state level. And whereas TDP hired a few political consultancies at the district level, it never had a state level strategy. So what happened I'll just give a brief description of what happened in 2014 elections. TDP BJP alliance won 2014 elections with a difference of 1.68% vote share. But in terms of seat, it made a very big difference, with TDP BJP winning 106 and YSR Congress just winning 67. So IPAC was commissioned much ahead for the 2019 elections by YSRCP, and it worked with them for 22 months, designing and implementing many database strategies including mass contact programs, what they called as Praja Sankalpa Yatra. And it also ran massive social media outreach campaigns in various fora for almost 10, 12 months. So in 2019 elections, YSR Congress Party won with 49% vote share, and TDP with 40% vote share only got 23 seats, while YSRCP got 151 seats with 49% vote share. So the 2019 elections in Andhra Pradesh were bought very bitterly, and they also raised questions about proprietary databases, perception management, disinformation campaigns, poll management, and also the role of political consultancies and data analytics in the process. So a lot of questions about how data has been used, who uses it, how they use it, have all come up during these elections. So coming to this proprietary data sets, what has been happening over the last few years is all the IT cells of political parties have been creating their own data sets, which are proprietary. They use their karyakartas, booth level workers, to collect individuals or voters' information, personal information, and they map it with the data which is already there, which is available on Election Commission of India website, which is also available booth-wise. And they have various other ways through which they can acquire data. Rajesh Serupalli, who worked for Social Post in Guntur for TDP, he told me that they used to buy mobile number data of people in the market, which is easily available, pin code wise, and then they will design their political campaigns, create WhatsApp groups, and make phone calls and SMS campaigns through that. So there's a big market, illegal market, which is operating there, where they can easily buy phone numbers of people in bulk and then use them for targeting them with election related information. What is more worrying of late has been the way in which the governments have been collecting massive information about people, especially after coming to power in 2014. Elected governments in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have collected socio-economic data through what they called as integrated household surveys. And the aim of this integrated household surveys was to make the welfare system more efficient. It's on the lines of Aadhaar, to plug leakages, to make the system more efficient, make it more like a smart governance. What Telangana government did, and also Andhra government did, is, for instance, Telangana government conducted integrated household survey in 2014. It declared August 19th as a public holiday to facilitate this exercise. It pressed into service 4 lakh government employees, including school teachers and police, to collect information about 8.4 million families in Telangana. And people were asked to stay home and keep several documents, including voter ID cards, PAN card, ration card, driving license, birth certificates, caste certificates, bank account details, and Aadhaar cards for verification and record by the enumerators. So it was a massive information collection exercise, and the stated aim was to collect it for the purpose of making welfare system more efficient. But there have always been concerns, because in terms of individual data privacy, it is a serious concern. But when it comes to electoral democracy, as data sets which they have collected are also being shared by ruling parties with their own party IT cells and consultants for strategizing in elections. The purpose was one, and they have been also using it for other purposes. How do we look at this? Gavin Smith suggests that the primary, although not exclusive, instigators and beneficiaries of data-driven environments are security and profit-oriented organizations, be they state agencies or businesses. Such public-private duopolies provide each of the invisible hands which steer this market and shape its surrounding infrastructure and meaning. So in this case, the government was steering the whole effort, and the data was being collected without giving any choice to the individuals. And what they were doing with data was not clear at all. What needs to be observed here is that data collected utilizing public resources and government machinery has become proprietary data and is utilized for advancing party goals. The opposition Congress party went to court, and then they asked the court to help them, make the petition to the court, saying that this survey data had to be made public, for which the Telangana government said that it will not share it with public, and it will only use it for governance purposes and nothing else. So nothing came out of that case, and they were unwilling to share the data publicly, and they kept it for themselves, the party in power. And they also said it's sub judice, so therefore will not provide it. The whole proprietary data issue came up into the public discourse with what is referred to in local media as data theft case. What happened was just before a few months before 2019 elections, a whistleblower who is also seen as a sympathizer of YSR Congress party lodged a complaint of data breach with Telangana police against a firm called IT Grids Private Limited, which works for TDP. And he alleged that TDP has provided private data of 3.7 crore voters of AP, including Smart Pulse survey reports, Aadhaar details, color photographs of voters and their mobile numbers. And he also charged that this whole data was amalgamated and uploaded into Seva Mitra app, which is used by TDP booth level workers to advance their own electoral prospects. So I tried to contact this whistleblower, but he was not willing to talk as he was entangled in a lot of legal cases. And he also said that he's writing a case on this with an IIM Bangalore professor. And he said it's kind of proprietary. He won't share it with me as well. So TDP in turn filed what happened was first, based on whistleblower's complaint, Telangana police filed a complaint on this firm. In turn, Telugu Desam Party filed a case of data theft against Telangana police with Andhra State Police for stealing its party data, and also accused Telangana government for sharing it with the opposition YSR Congress party. So it's a very complicated and serious case. And this case draws our attention to the rise of data-driven models of poll management in India and the attendant fears of voter profiling, electoral malpractices, and breaches to citizen database. So this case also involved data breach of Aadhaar. The Unique Identification Authority of India, UDAI, said their servers were not breached and that it's possible that data could have been accessed from state resident data hub. So they said their national servers have not been breached, but at the regional level, something has happened. And a state resident data hub is an Aadhaar seeded repository of information consolidated from multiple government databases. It's as good as Aadhaar database, and it has been breached in this case. So what has been happening is these proprietary databases which have been created by these parties, which were the logics of creating them is to say that we'll plug leakages in the welfare system, fight against the middlemen taking away the benefits using fake identities at the expense of both poor and the state. But this technocratic solution with a pro-poor logic has its own flip side. In practice, these data sets are being used extensively by political parties and the families that control them to their own advantage. In the context of electoral democracies, data analytics seems to be enabling the identification and classification of groups and individuals, particularly those from the margins, and using it for controlling the levers of power through electoral management. Sadowski suggests that we should see this process as not as data mining or data gathering, but as data extraction. So we need to reframe when we look at these instances. Probably the word data extraction is more appropriate according to Sadowski. When we talk about data being collected, gathered, or even mined, the image conjured is one of neutral accumulation, as if data existed out in the world as a distinct thing already available to be harvested. However, analyzing this process in terms of extraction emphasizes the people targeted by and the exploitative nature of data valence, unquote. While market players seem to be extracting data through everyday transactions and social networking sites, governments, like in this instance, seems to be extracting data through diktats. The integrated household surveys were done in the guise of good governance. If you use the analogy, for example, of how in the last 2 decades, the special economic zones were created by the governments by forcefully taking private land and giving it to private companies. Something similar is happening in this case too. Data extraction is also being forced as citizens have no other option but to participate in the integrated household survey and give the data. And there is no assurance that it will not be used for purposes which other than what it's been acquired for. So discussing about Aadhaar and its and the attendant issues, Sarkar argues that this new digital identity is tied to welfare benefits. Clearly, people are operating within structured power relations and they are often powerless to contest. So there's nothing they can do. There's nothing people can do to contest it. The data capital of the government becomes the data capital in the hands of the party in the power. The logics of government extraction are very hard to contest because they are one-sided and non-negotiable. And what Sadowski would suggest in this kind of a context is to look at data extraction as an exploitative process, as data has become the core component of political economy in the 21st century. So what he talks of as data-based harm. So one has to be careful and think of what will come out of these data-based harms. Coming to the next section, which came up in a significant way in my discussions with in the interviews, we'll look at data turn in perception management and its role in disinformation campaigns. Data turn in perception management is based on the assumption that if social media analytics, search analytics are mined well, communication can be very sharp, and that data can be used to build effective political campaigns. And they give many examples for that, including Make America Great Again and Crooked Hillary campaign, which is actually a disinformation campaign. According to Sumiran, whom I interviewed, who is IT and social media head of BJYM of Greater Hyderabad region, they gauge the mood of the public through people's reactions in social media, tweets, retweets, comments, likes, shares, etc. They also conduct polls online to gauge public reaction or the general environment, keep track of trends, keywords, and viral content. The data in turn is used to come up with campaigns. He says they came up with Unemployment in Telangana campaign in 2019 elections, and it was a success as it was based on social media reactions, which they carefully used to construct this campaign. It was a success in the sense it played an important role in yielding 4 MP seats for BJP in Telangana in 2019 elections. And according to Brahmaya of CBN Army, of a wing of TDP, campaigns related to surgical strikes worked very well for BJP as they were very close to majority perceptions articulated on social media, especially of those worried about national security and threat from Pakistan. There is when it comes to perception management, there is a very thin line because many of them turn into disinformation campaigns as well. Sumiran of BJYM emphatically says that Rafale was a disinformation campaign against BJP, and he says that they have countered this by systematic dissemination of facts pertinent to the deal. Some of the IT cells did not respond to me, but those who responded always said that they don't indulge in any disinformation campaign, while they defend their parties from the disinformation campaigns which come from the other side. Arguments made in the context of disinformation campaigns suggest that data is not just raw material which is discovered, as suggested in many datafication debates. Rather, it points to the constructed nature of data. It's a product of specialized labor where it is efficiently mined and sometimes even manufactured by consultants to suit the political goals of their clients. So for instance, Brahmaya gives the example of 2019 elections in which YSR Congress Party has successfully conveyed the message that Chandrababu Naidu government works only for his own caste. He says DSP promotion case, as it is called, was a successful disinformation campaign run by YSR Congress in 2019 elections. This campaign refers to the allegation that 29 out of 33 circle inspectors promoted as deputy superintendents, DSPs of police just before elections were from the same caste of Chandrababu. Brahmaya says this news was systematically spread in social networking sites, WhatsApp, later in newspapers and channels favorable to YSR Congress Party. It was followed up with a press statement by opposition leader Jagan Mohan Reddy in Delhi. Brahmaya says it's an absolute lie, as only 3 DSPs in the proposed panel were from Kamma caste. He says the TDP was not able to respond to the disinformation campaign in time, damaging party's electoral prospects in a state rife with political equations. So there were many disinformation campaigns which were run where data was actually manufactured. It's not really data mining or data analytics here, where they can invent some data which is not there. A 2-month study conducted by Oxford University on the quality of political news and information circulated on Facebook and WhatsApp groups run by political parties around 2019 elections in India concluded that the proportion, I quote, the proportion of polarizing political news and information in circulation or social media in India is worse than all the other country case studies we have analyzed, except US presidential election in 2016. So they rate India one step below US presidential elections, but they say it's one of the worst when it comes to polarizing information which is circulated on Facebook and WhatsApp groups. Its analysis of WhatsApp groups reveals that a third of BJP's images, a quarter of Congress Party's images, and a tenth of SP and BSP's images were divisive and conspiratorial. Perception management in Indian electoral context also involves managing election surveys and how they are disseminated. I'll just give one example. There are many. Venkatesu, state coordinator of CSDS Lokniti, a national poll survey organization, says that ABN Andhra Jyoti TV channel and Andhra Jyoti newspaper misuse their name to disseminate fake survey results. So in April 2019, CSDS Lokniti called out ABN Group for publishing fake survey, attributing it to their organization. The alleged survey predicted victory for TDP with the number which also gave the number of seat shares and vote shares, while CSDS in an official statement claimed that it has not done any survey in Andhra Pradesh, that it's not associated with any such survey, and it has not placed in public domain any reported findings, and the news that is being circulated is mischievous and malafide. So a lot of misleading campaigns were taking place throughout the elections, and most of the data was fictitious. So data term in poll management. Poll management is a very interesting term, and it has been used by political parties for quite some time in India. It's a catch-all term that includes everything from forming booth-level committees and integrating them with the state-level election war rooms for coordination. Depending on the resources, each party can start its poll management 6 months ahead of elections or sometimes 2 years ahead of elections. Based on booth-level data, the booth representatives or as they are called as Panna Pramukhs in some parties, they do various activities ranging from being in touch with voters continuously, reminding them of the schemes they benefited from, assessing their political views, influencing caste and community leaders, distributing liquor and money a few days before elections, ensuring party sympathizers vote on the polling day, if possible, threaten and discourage opposition party sympathizers from voting, providing transportation to election venue. All these come under poll management for political parties. What has happened in the last few years is data analytics has made this process more efficient and more problematic. These parties work with time series data, booth-wise and constituency-wise, and they sharpen their poll management strategies. Some parties have developed apps to integrate every booth-level worker and equip them with actionable information. Congress had Shakti app, TDP had Seva Mitra app, and other parties had other modes of giving information to booth-level workers. Data analytics has made it possible to identify, classify, and target voters at various levels based on demographics. Micro-targeting has become a widely used practice in the past few years, and all political consultancies use this practice. Shashidhar of IPAC says, scheme beneficiary data was shared to BJP booth-level karyakartas who would go to individual beneficiary homes and remind them of the benefits they received from the government before elections. For instance, BJP Karyakartas went about visiting homes of beneficiaries and reminding them that they have benefited from Ujjwal Yojana of Modi Sarkar before the elections. This Ujjwal Yojana is a subsidized LPG scheme for below poverty line homes. So they would go to every home, say that we gave you this LPG connection, please don't forget that. Micro-targeting is also done by customized messaging based on data. Shashidhar gave another example of how BJP used SMS and WhatsApp groups to consistently remind upper caste youth in 18 to 28 years age group before 2019 elections that EWS reservation has been given to them by the party. So they do not want every message to go to everybody. So they'll make WhatsApp groups of upper caste youth in a particular age group, and they target them saying that, look, we have given you EWS, don't forget it. And that message will not go for other caste groups. It will only go to the selected WhatsApp groups which have already been created systematically. Further, political consultants use data for tailoring speeches in specific locations so that they can instigate some communities intentionally so that it will lead to consolidation of other communities. Or they can also use it for selection of candidates, and they've been using data in various ways in sharpening their poll strategies. At an extreme level, data is also being used to tamper with voter lists. And the case in question is using Form 7 of Election Commission to enable voter suppression in the case of 2019 elections. This Form 7 of Election Commission of India is an application that provides opportunity for objecting to inclusion of a name in the electoral rolls or seeking deletion of self or other names from the electoral rolls. So I can ask for deletion of my own name or somebody else's name if I think it's a bogus vote. So that provision is there. So in 2019 elections, both TDP and YSR Congress made allegations against each other that they have applied for voter deletions en masse. The State Election Commission got 8 lakh voter deletion requests in just 2 weeks in April 2019. Thousands of voter deletion requests were made from same IP address in the names of people sometimes who are dead and sometimes who are illiterate. In some cases, within one constituency, 7,000 to 10,000 applications came for voter deletions, because in constituencies where there is a tough fight, each one was trying to get the votes of other party sympathizers deleted. This became a big issue in media, and the Election Commission did not act on them. However, the problem was the Election Commission did not make any efforts to track those who tried to purge voter list and also get them punished. So nothing happened after that. So there were attempts at voter suppression, but Election Commission has not taken any action on that. No further investigations were also made by police. This instance also reminds us of US presidential elections 2000 and voter voter suppression in Florida, which has become a major issue in 2000, where almost 23% of black voters were disenfranchised in felony cases. So broadly, these are the issues I wanted to flag when it comes to data and datafication in elections. The last thing I would like to mention is about the open data policy of Election Commission in an age of big data analytics. The public sharing of voter data by Election Commission is done on the naturalized premise that open data is essential for a thriving democracy. As per the current open data sharing policy, sharing voter data is not seen as a violation of individual privacy, nor is it looked at from the perspective of who is using this open data and for what purposes. So no questions asked, data is available. Even though the data sharing and accessibility of policy of government is well-intentioned from the perspective of providing data gathered with public funds back to the public, it fails to consider the perils of continuously making citizen data and voter behavior available to third parties who could use it to harmful ends, coming back to Sadowski's idea of data-based harm. The primary source of data for data analytics by political consultancies, IT cells of political parties, and Opinion Pollsters is a data rolls published by the Election Commission of India on their website. So anybody can go to Election Commission of India website, access booth-wise data and also time series data historically. It'll also tell you who vote, get some idea of vote shares in that booth-wise in every previous election. And that right now booth level data and that is used as a base for creating proprietary databases. So when these parties make their own proprietary databases, they use that as a base, add information which is not available, especially mobile phone numbers, their color photos, which can be added so that it can be more useful for them. And what government schemes have they benefited from? Venugopal Rao of Center for Psephology Studies says Election Commission should not share booth-wise data. It should be given only at the macro level, which could be at the block or district level. Giving booth-level data endangers electoral democracy in many ways. Post-election analysis by political parties reveals who has not voted for their party, and this has resulted in targeting people, sometimes by stopping welfare benefits by winning parties. There are many reported instances of demanding return of money given to voters for not voting to their party, sometimes beating them up and even excommunicating them. Discussing the status of marginalized in the datafication discourse, Payal Arora argues that one should be very careful while celebrating digital initiatives, as, I quote, in the datafication of the body, there is an innate assumption of harmony among the state, the data, and the body. This mythification of harmony serves as a serious barrier to thoughtful, reflexive policy and practice, unquote. So the Election Commission of India feels it's being transparent in publicly sharing the data. However, there is no role for the voter in terms of consent in this whole process. The draft Personal Data Protection Bill, which was drafted by Justice Sri Krishna, has provisions that would affect the way voter rolls are published by Election Commission currently. The bill has been introduced in the Parliament and is under study by Joint Parliamentary Committee. However, the bill proposes to regulate the processing of personal data of individuals by what the bill calls as data principals and data fiduciaries, both public, the government and the private entities incorporated in India and abroad. And it will also provide a chance for the individual to give consent. Otherwise, they cannot use the data. But as of now, it's not. It has not become an act. And meanwhile, all the political parties were able to make their own databases using the government infrastructure, which is already available with them, and it will be useful for them for many more years to come. So I'll stop here. And if there are any questions, I'll take them.
Thank you so much, Satya sir. Your presentation examined grassroots level deployment of data analytics in electoral politics, media discourses about data misuse, surveillance, and disinformation campaigns during the election period. I think datafication in elections are a really hot topic right now, as politicians are relying even more so on digital and social media to reach out to people as they campaign in a COVID-19, post-COVID-19 world. So we'll have questions from the Zoom meeting participants shortly, and I will ask you all the Zoom chat and FB Live comment questions together towards the end of the meeting if possible. I will ask all the Zoom chat and FB Live comment questions. Sorry, I will ask all the participants to request, to raise their hands, and I will announce your names in order. I'm trying to multitask a little bit too much here. You will find the raise hand option next to your username. And if you can't raise your hand, please let me know that you would like to ask a question via personal message here. Kindly turn on your microphone and video depending on your connection when it is your turn to ask, and please keep your questions as brief as possible so we can have maximum interaction with the speaker. We will take questions starting now for the next 10 minutes only to manage time better. Okay, so we have, Preeti, if you can hear me, we have our first question. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Question is, is there a sense of economic value of the data, because you're talking about proprietary data sets being built on ECI's data and things like that? Is there a sense of the economic value of data? Are people thinking about it already?
I mean, in the sense, in a political economic sense, it gives them power. We know that in our context, the parties in power are rent seekers. So those who gain power can deal with everybody, right? So the value is not direct, the value is very indirect. So they know there is value, not in market terms, but in terms of power, it's a lot of value.
Okay.
So the data which they have,
sir.
the data sets, is completely illegal, but they all have them.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Next, we have Usha ma'am, please. If you could hear me, unmute yourself, or even video, if possible.
Yeah, I can hear you. So thanks, Satya, for that presentation. Very interesting. And my question is there a sense of any collusion between the private sector and the parties? I mean, I know a lot of the intermediaries, for instance, are private entities. But is there any, did you get a sense of any traffic between corporate interests and the political power centers in your conversations with the parties?
In the interviews, they're not willing to talk about all those things. Many of them wanted to speak about how good their IT cell is, and how the other party IT cell is bad. So if I would have spoken to YSR Congress IT cell, they would have said something. They didn't speak to me at all. If I would have spoken to BJP IT cell, they would have told something. Only TDP IT cell president was willing to speak, and he was reflecting on their failures. So others were not forthcoming. But definitely, I mean, the connection is very clear. When it comes to how Aadhaar project was also implemented, they had a lot of private players collecting information. It looked like it's government, but a lot of private companies were involved in that. And what happened to that data at various levels is something which nobody knows. When this IT firm, which is providing services for TDP, IT Grids India Private Limited, it was raided. Apparently, they had data which should have been in other state resident hub. So they found that all the data with color photographs of all voters with their mobile numbers integrated into that. So it's a serious issue, but then it's not in the open. Not big IT firms are involved in that. So all those interests are they're below the carpet. You can't see them.
Yeah. But I think it would be worthwhile to map out. I mean, I think it has been done in the case of Aadhaar, but also in these, more nebulous kinds of extractive projects, how the intermediaries end up, also perhaps servicing corporate interests without making it obvious. That might be an interesting area to explore as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Prasheel. If you could please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Devina, for the opportunity. And thank you, Satya, sir, for the talk. Very interesting way to thoroughly amazed by the different channels of data that came in through your talk in terms of interviews and also looking at newspaper reports, and then I'm sure a bit of analysis also went through trying to string them together. Coming to my question, it's not really a question, but a set of observations. I'll try to string them together in one comment. Can I have about close to 40 seconds, Devina? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, during the 90s elections in India, whenever they happened at the state level or at the parliament level, there were reports next day of things like booth capturing going on. which clearly presented the understanding that there was this power structure operating and a social infrastructure operating, which captured booths, influenced voters in all sorts of ways, which is a practice. So, in terms of a flow, are we moving from a booth capture kind of process followed by ones in power to something like a data capture stream, right? Where instead of a physical closure, there is a virtual closure now. But that being said, uh, I'm commenting on Arora's quotation from your talk, Satya sir. That being said, is the body really personal? I mean, is data really personal? Is health really personal? Are these very personal categories that there is a sense of losing out to the power structure through revealing the number of steps you take in a day, to which party's comments you like on social media? Right. I hope I made sense. That's as I want your comments on that, Satya sir.
I'll give the example Boyd and Crawford. When if a person is sitting in a park, it means they're public. It also means they're not public, right? If the data is available on Election Commission of India website, it means public, but it also doesn't mean that anybody can use that time series data and use it for very harmful ends, which they've been doing. So in that sense, the whole effort which is possible within this framework is ask for some regulatory frameworks, like they have asked for regulatory frameworks earlier to stop booth capturing. There should be some efforts to stop this kind of data manipulation. So what you're saying is true. I mean, there have been different methods earlier for voter suppression, as it is happening now. There have been different methods to run malified campaigns, as they're doing it now. So the amount of data has increased, and they know where the swing is. Like in US context, they've been working only on the swing states, or in the context of India, they'll work on constituencies where there's very, very tough fight, or communities who are very crucial. In 2019 elections, the crucial fight in Andhra Pradesh election was for the BC electorate. So who would swing them? Who would say that we are good and the other one is bad? That's the most important thing. So they would do anything for that. They would use all kinds of information and data.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I'm satisfied. Sure. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So next we have lots of questions from Facebook comment from Tambi Kona, who's I hope I've pronounced the name correctly. I'm sorry if it's wrong. He is a program officer with Caritas India NGO. I'm just posting his question in chat for everyone to see. So he has questions about EVMs and whether they are programmed. He has questions about complaints from villagers before elections that representatives of IT cells from different political parties remove their names from the official list. And he's actually quoted TDP versus YCP, the case here. And how is it possible for private IT firms to have so much reach? And how to address these issues if they are real? So lots of questions there.
Okay. Can you repeat some of them? It's not clear to me.
Sorry, yes, of course. So I have posted it in chat in case you want to do a quick read. One, he's asking about EVMs and that they are pre-programmed. He's also mentioned that this is mainly a North states problem. Then he's mentioned about complaints from villagers where they say that different political parties' IT cells have removed their names from the official voters list. And he's mentioned specific TDP versus YCP case. And the third thing is, he's asked is, how is it possible for private IT firms to have so much reach? And how do we address these issues if they are real? That's the fourth question.
I have no solutions for that. But to begin with, this question of EVMs has always been there. And party which loses will always say that EVMs are pre-programmed. So that is also an issue. When they win, they say it's all fine. So whether it's being pre-programmed or not is something which nobody knows. If it is, then it's still a secret. Nobody knows it. So I'm not technical enough to answer those questions, so I would avoid that when it comes to the EVMs. But when it comes to this, using the mechanism of Election Commission to ensure there is voter deletion, they attempted it, and the scale was so high. The Election Commission refused to delete any votes before this election, because both the parties have the habit of enrolling bogus votes. They'll not remove votes which even after people die. So if it's under their control, they can also vote for the person who has already died if the vote is not deleted. So there are many such problems, lacuna, which are there in the voter list. So the Election Commission actually gives an opportunity. If a person is dead, you have to remove their name, which X party will not be willing to, but the Y party would want it to be removed. So there are many such issues, but in the end of the day, before 2019 elections, the request for voter deletions was so high, Election Commission refused to delete anything. So we do not know how many, but it tells us that there is a serious problem there. And coming to IT firms, the parties in power have their own IT firms which are sympathetic, and they give the data to them to work on it. So it's a relationship they have with them.
So I'm going to squeeze a question of my own here because we have a few minutes left, and I was wondering if this is the world that we're in now, and it's rapidly changing. You either have the opportunity to get into the system and create your own ways of using the system for your benefit, or you can sit back and complain about the things that you mentioned, that the party which loses will always say that the EVMs were malfunctioning, or there's some scam that was going on. I recently attended a virtual conference, in a way thanks to COVID-19, which was about memes and how political parties are using memes. And there was a very fun presentation by Alessandro Lurli, who's the author of La Guerra de Meme, and his presentation was about the left can't meme. So based on whatever you've looked at in terms of IT cells and what they've done, what is your outlook about taking the system and using the benefits, the affordances that the system allows you, and just using it for your benefit? So maybe the left should start memeing. What do you think?
Not sure, but maybe if I have come across as the system being quite, big data as being dystopian, I don't think that's the intention. Of course, the debates normally range between how big data projects can be useful, like in the case of arguments favorable to UDAI or any other project like that, or that it can be dystopian in terms of voter suppression and all. But the truth lies somewhere in between, and there is a lot of competition between opposing parties. So they checkmate each other, and to that extent, it's beneficial. All of us learn how to deal with this situation, and we'll have to move ahead with that. So the technology is there. It's not neutral. So one has to figure out how to come up with regulations wherein it doesn't harm people. So, for instance, courts have declared data consolidation unconstitutional in Europe, whereas in our case that has not happened. So we can look for some judicial solutions, legislative solutions, which can reduce this data-based harm. And for that, we need to have some informed debates, show that there are cases where it's abused, to make a case and argue for protections.
I believe we are looking at getting some sort of version of GDPR to India as well. I think talks have already started in that sense.
Yeah.
Right. I think we are sorted with questions. Yes. Yes, we have.
Okay.
All right. This is, thank you so much, Satya sir. This is all the time we have for today.
So thank you, Devina. Thank you, Pranay, Anirudh, and the whole team. So thank you very much.